Good afternoon. I am honored to welcome you. I am honored to stand before you on the land of the Ohlone peoples for this wonderful event. And I am truly honored to introduce the Charlene Conrad Liebau Library Prize for Undergraduate Research and the American Culture's Innovation in Teaching and Student Research Prize. So let's first of all congratulate our winners. I'd also like to thank everyone who made this event possible, but also who has worked with our amazing scholars to make these experiences possible. I'd also like to shout out to Victoria Robinson, our director for the American Culture Program. This event reflects our campus's deep appreciation of our faculty and students' dedication to academic excellence. It is an opportunity to celebrate years of hard work and commitment to issues and questions that matter dearly to those we recognize today and to the broader campus community. As you will hear from the titles and descriptions of these undergraduate research projects, our students are a curious bunch. And the curiosity is matched with sophisticated and imaginative vision and analysis. They are truly scholars in every dimension. We also welcome the family, friends, and colleagues that join us today. The awards that we are presenting celebrate not only stellar individual accomplishments, but also the support structure that comes from those with and from whom we learn. I especially thank the many campus librarians and academic partners whose essential advice and guidance literally made much of the scholarship presented here possible in partnership with our scholars. Great education provides a broad vision for life, and as we may know too well, rarely is that broad vision of life so simple as to provide a roadmap to the answers for the struggles, questions, and possibilities of that life. But there is indeed great strength in a broad vision, a vision which includes the musicians, the policymakers, the writers, the faith leaders, the organizers, the scientists, a vision which reverberates in the works we celebrate today. In this afternoon's program, seemingly disparate projects and different visions from our undergraduate prize winners articulate, inform, and shape the way in which they view the world. And that really helps inform us how we shape the view of the world as we experience that research and we also probe it. It is extremely rewarding and exciting to read our students' work and their visions of the world of the past, the present, and the future. Each year, the ceremony is a sharp and beautiful reminder of the great possibilities that education and imagination can afford. We hope you enjoy this afternoon's celebration. It is truly one of the great events that we hold on campus and really a time for all of us to experience the joy of research and scholarship. And now we will be joined by UC Berkeley's University Librarian, Jeff Mackey Mason. So let's welcome him.
Thanks so much, Oscar. I'm going to be very brief for a couple of reasons. One is that we thought I might not make it back. I just got back from a trip literally 5 minutes ago. And so Beth very kindly agreed to fill in for me. So she'll be speaking on behalf of the library. But I asked if I could still stand up and just greet everybody here. This is one of my favorite programs and one of my favorite events on campus. It's so wonderful to have the opportunity to celebrate our student scholars. And really, this program celebrates all of the undergraduate scholars on this campus, who are a remarkable bunch, by acknowledging the accomplishments of the prize winners and particularly celebrating them. And we do that and we congratulate them, but it's really an honor that we are able to do a program like this at Berkeley because there's so many exciting, intelligent, scholarly students here. But I just wanted to have the chance to congratulate our prize winners today, to congratulate and thank their faculty advisors. It's a wonderful set of projects this year. I've been enjoying reading them and learning from them, and I hope some of you will take the chance to do that. There's an exhibit for one of them upstairs, which is always a great way to dig into it more deeply, and to thank you all for being here to join in celebrating their accomplishments. Thanks, and now Beth Dupuis will speak on behalf of the library.
afternoon and welcome to the library, and specifically to Morrison Library. As everyone ahead of me said, this is my favorite event. I don't have to do any work except for the last 5 minutes before you all got here is to prepare and actually make sure that I knew who all the winners were. But so many people put so much effort into making this event the special experience that it is. The students who worked on these projects do such incredible work over a breadth of topics. And every year, the people who are on the judging committee come away with this remarkable sense of renewal about what it is to be at Berkeley because of these projects. So you'll get a glimpse of that without having to read all of the papers that they read. You'll just get the best ones. This is our 16th year of the event, and I want to recognize Charlene Conrad-Liebau, who is here with us today, who is... Charlene is the namesake for our Library Prize for Undergraduate Research, a devoted library donor and the chair of our Library Friends Board, and it's great that you could be here with us because I think she even knows how special it is to actually hear from the students themselves. So the Library Prize for Undergraduate Research really highlights the extraordinary range of library collections that we have in print and digital format across a range of disciplines and departments, but also recognizes the value of librarians who help students in guiding them to find these resources and make use of them in their papers and projects. The prize also recognizes the commitment of faculty instructors, lecturers, graduate student instructors who inspire students in their courses by encouraging them to explore challenging topics, to articulate researchable questions, and to draw conclusions based on evidence. And certainly the Library Prize is really about celebrating student learning. For many of the undergraduate students, this is the first time they've really tackled deep research, and the resources of our library can be daunting. Just figuring out how many libraries there are and how to get to them, let alone what's available in them, can be daunting. So this celebrates curiosity, focus, perseverance, and true grit of our undergraduate students. Significant research here requires sophisticated strategies, breadth, and understanding of disciplines, and also excellent communication skills in articulating sort of the lessons that they're learning. Uniquely, this award focuses on celebrating the research process and not just the written paper or product. And that's what's so interesting you'll hear as you look at what these students have done, is really them thinking too about the ways that they approached articulating their question and finding ways to answer those through a very complex information landscape. As Jeff mentioned, throughout the year, we spotlight our winning projects, and just today it was announced that we opened our newest exhibit on the second floor of Doe Library. So after this event, if you want to explore more, you take the marble staircase right up to the top. You'll see an exhibit entitled Brahms' Piano Exercise Mode and the Politics of Friendship, which was our winner last year as a 2017 by Theodora Serbinescu Martin. And that paper and exhibit examines Brahms' physical language and pianistic techniques using evidence from primary sources such as letters, treatises, artwork, and various musical examples from Brahms. The student even actually performed the work, and I don't know how that's exhibited in the exhibit, but you can go check that out. My thanks especially, as I mentioned, to the Library Prize Committee, the judges and the faculty and instructors, campus partners, and librarians and library staff who all make the actual research process fun and learning fun. So let's get this rolling. We are going to celebrate today the 10 prize winners and honorable mentions. So sit back, relax, and let's start announcing some of those winners. I'll be calling each person up here, and we're going to be asking them to share a little bit with you in their own words. So our first recipient, and we've divided these prizes, I should say, into upper division and lower division awards, and part of that is to recognize that people are not all necessarily going to know how to do research at the same level. You grow in your ability to do research and understanding about the process as you go through different kinds of projects, and so we want to recognize it's a continuum of skills. And so our first lower division prize winner is Shubha Jagannatha with a paper called The Girls Who Were Never Born, a study of sex selection in healthcare professionals in India, for college writing R4B with Margie Wald.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to be here with you today. I'm currently a first year studying electrical engineering and computer science. As a new age of cheaper, more accessible ultrasound technology and abortion services has dawned upon India, the age-old issue of female infanticide, the purposeful murder of female infants, has taken on a new guise in sex-selective abortions, the pointed abortion of female fetuses. The continued discrimination against the girl child in India has led to an increasingly skewed sex ratio and heightened the rates of violence against women. My paper centers around the role of healthcare professionals in India, the gatekeepers who control the keys to allowing sex selection and who are providing gender-determining ultrasound services and sex-selective abortions despite the illegality of such services in India. I explored the various reasons and doctors may use to buy into the bad faith and justify providing sex selection in hopes that a deeper understanding of the psychology driving their actions can aid India in fighting this gender discrimination effectively. The challenge of constructing this paper was in coming up with a research question. In my search for a research topic relevant to the modern day, in the battle to uncover primary resources on a topic so heavily veiled by the Indian medical community, and in finding legal documents and studies to shape my arguments, the Berkeley Library System was my most valuable friend. The databases, journals, and million questions I sifted through during this process were at my fingertips the moment I was prompted to start my search. I would like to express my utmost gratitude to instructor Margie Wald of the College Writing Department, who provided valuable guidance, support, and inspiration throughout this research process. Thank you.
And what are we doing about photography this year?
We did photographs before.
Oh, and you've already had your picture taken?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, next up, we have Christina Smelser. Her paper is titled A Multi-Layered Approach to Anglo-Dutch Relations and was written for a history R1B class with Julia Lewandowski. Come on up.
Hello everyone, it's an honor to be here. My name is Christina and I'm a freshman hoping to study public health and environmental economics and policy. This paper was written for my history R1B writing class taught by Julia Lewandowski. And essentially throughout this class, we've been analyzing the politics of mapping, particularly focused on colonialism in North America. So for this paper, I incorporated one primary source, which was a Dutch-made map of the Chesapeake Bay, which was a territory owned by the English. And I also incorporated several different secondary sources. And essentially what I argued in this paper was I contrasted the micro-level interactions, the interpersonal interactions of the Dutch and English in the New World with the more macro-level political interactions of the Dutch and English administrative bodies. And I would say the biggest takeaway throughout my library research process, which was a long one, was that it's okay to change and shift my argument as I delve through different sources and find new ideas and new perspectives. And then one other major takeaway, I would say, is to read through the footnotes, which I had never really done before. I found so many great sources just by doing that, and it made the library research process a lot easier. And I would really like to thank my history R1B instructor, Julia, for all of her help along the way and for all of her great advice for us and her encouragement to keep writing and to keep making new drafts throughout the process, because I wouldn't be where I was today without that. So thank you.
We also have some honorable mentions in the lower division category, and I want to next recognize Haroon Bukhari with a paper titled Frankenfood, the misunderstood monster of the GMO debate, for college writing R4B with Ryan Sloan. Haroon?
He's probably going to be late, so.
He missed his 5 minutes in the sun. Okay, come back. All right, well, let's give him a round of applause anyway. Okay, next up, I want to recognize Maria Escobar Tobar for a paper called Gentrification in San Francisco, No One Right Answer, for college writing R4B with Michael Larkin. Maria?
Hello everyone, my name is Maria and I am double major in Spanish literature and social welfare. As I was writing this paper, I took the class with Professor Michael Larkin. This class really invited me to read different books and to think critically about what I wanted to write. And since the main topic about the class it was technology, so I wanted to focus about gentrification, because as my family went through gentrification, that was something very personal to me. And so when I decided to write this paper, I looked at different components of this problem, which was I found that like tech workers were the one displacing the community. But my first idea was that as I was reading, my knowledge about this problem increased as the different components were more complex than I was thinking. I found that the learners also were displacing the Latino community from their houses. They were giving false notice about them moving out from the apartment. And also, the activists couldn't find a right solution for them to like support the Latino community. So as I was understanding the problem, I had to change my question different time and to make different draft, because I couldn't write a paper where I had my initial idea and no look around the different components of this. And so I found some the primary resources in the library, but I couldn't rely only in the history of gentrification. I had to look for newspaper that talk about the current problem and how the different components the different people are working to make this possible and to like contribute to the problem. And so by looking at the newspapers, that allowed me to find the little details that we don't see and they are hide from the people, and that's what it makes the problem more complex. So I want to thank my professor, Michael Larkin, who was always there, trying to always help me to think critically and to see the different ways, the different angles of the problem. And so, thank you again.
See, aren't you inspired to go read some newspapers now? So next up, we're going to recognize our recipients in the upper division category, and our first award winner is Julia Burke for a paper called Over Mary's Dead Body, Frankenstein, Sexism, and Socialism for a History 101 class with Trevor Jackson. Julia?
Hi, everybody. I'm so honored and grateful to have been chosen for this award, so thank you. In a nutshell, this was my senior thesis. So my senior thesis proposed a re-examination of the impact of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein on 19th century socialist ideology, specifically through a look at her personal influence on the Marx-Engels group. And when I first proposed this idea to my thesis advisor, he, like all of my other early sounding boards, was very skeptical. For some reason, Marxist interpretations of Frankenstein are really common, but the chronological Shelleyan interpretation of Marx was always received with distrust. But I quickly realized that finding any legitimate reading of Mary Shelley was going to be difficult, let alone one valuing or even acknowledging her contributions to 19th century political ideology. Because 4 months after Frankenstein was published anonymously in 1818, it was revealed that Mary Shelley was a woman, which turned out to be far scarier to her all-male audience than any of her proto-sci-fi dystopian horror novels. So I spent a lot of time this past semester sitting by the Shelley Godwin bookshelf in Mainstacks, reading angrily 200 years of outdated but not so outdated sexism, and I had the best time. It was so fun. I'd like to thank my friends who generously listened to every infuriating development in the research process and this speech multiple times today, and the library for its inclusivity. It had everything from Mary's own diaries and journal entries to a book published in 2007 claiming that Frankenstein was a homosexual romance novel written entirely by Percy Shelley. It had too much historical integrity. The library had too much historical integrity to reject any attempt at truth, however questionable. But most important, I want to thank my thesis advisor, who I don't think is here tonight, but that's okay. Dr. Trevor Jackson is the best teacher I have ever had. Despite his initial skepticism, he was always so willing to read draft after draft. His advice was exceptional and his guidance was invaluable, and whether or not I could have done it without him, I wouldn't have wanted to. He was a skillful editor and selfless instructor, and by far the biggest influence on my academic career at Cal, and I'm sure those of dozens of other students. So Berkeley and I owe you more than we could ever repay, and we'll miss you immensely. Thank you.
Okay, next up we have prize winner in the upper division, Nicholas Eskow, for sympathy for the loss of a comrade, Black citizenship, and the 1873 Fort Stockton Mutiny, for anthropology H195, a course with Professor Lori Wilkie. Nicholas?
Hi, anyone who knows me knows that I'm extremely wordy, so I'm going to try to be brief. But my name is Nick Eskow. I did this for my senior honors thesis in my major, anthropology. I'm a super senior. I did this as part of my Haas Scholars research. And briefly, what the paper looks at is there was an incident in 1873. A black soldier stationed at Fort Stockton, Texas, was refused medical treatment and died. The other black soldiers at the fort drafted a petition calling for formal investigation and censure of the fort doctor for what they felt was malicious negligence. And instead, and the petition, I should say, was signed by 129 out of 178 soldiers stationed there. The response was to put 21 of the non-commissioned officers and other soldiers on trial for attempted mutiny, for which they were sentenced to hard labor. And then the sentence was overturned after 6 months and they were dishonorably discharged. And so I looked at this as a case of not only, typically in the literature, this has been looked at as either the soldiers resisting against the the white officers, or the officers handling a difficult situation, but the narrative is typically centered around the officers and not the soldiers. So I looked very in-depth. I went to the National Archives on several trips, photographed about 2,500 pages of documents. I surveyed about 100 books or more here, and innumerable online archival resources, to try to look in depth at the lives of these soldiers and understand this from the soldiers' perspective as best I could as an expression of Black citizenship, Black embodiment, the tensions between medical authority and bodily autonomy, and then I tried to take a long-term view at the outcome of this case, and found that the later lives of many of the soldiers showed that this was a moment of military solidarity, of Black solidarity, and of literate and educational solidarity. And in particular, I found that the soldier who had written the petition went on to name his sons Toussaint and Louverture, went on to become very involved in Black politics and Freemasonry. And I promised you I would be brief, so I realize I've given much more than the 2 or 3 sentences we were suggested. So it was an unbelievably exciting project to work on. The library provided, if there's any one thing that I took away from the process of library research, it was that it was very collaborative. I relied on the cataloging work. I relied on conversations with librarians. I've talked to librarians in archives around the country. So it's been an amazing experience. I'm going to double check that I'm hitting all the points I wanted to hit. Mostly, I do want to thank, I'm extremely honored to be the recipient of this award. Enormous thanks to the library committee. Enormous thanks to Professor Lori Wilkie, who has provided more opportunities than I can possibly say. And many more people. Again, I promised I would be brief. So thank you so much, and it's a great honor. Thank you.
Next up, we have Upper Division winner Marnie Lowe for a paper called Resonance, Radicalism, and the Death Penalty. This is a paper for Legal Studies H195 with Professors Calvin Morell and Lauren Edelman. Is Marnie with us?
All right. Hi, everyone, and thank you for coming out today. I'm a legal studies major, and I'm graduating this spring, so like in a week and a half. And I completed this project as part of the Legal Studies Honors Thesis program. My work centered on the death penalty because it's a field that I became familiar with working with capital defense attorneys, but I was curious to know more about it from a social movement standpoint. So my project applied a social movement framing analysis to the recent history of the anti-death penalty movement, which in other words looks at how the people in this movement discussed or talked about the death penalty in order to get people on their side. Specifically, I was examining how these discussions have changed over time, especially in response to other political structures like the Supreme Court and public opinion polls and all sorts of things like that. If you want the punchline, I found that in general over the last 50 years that pragmatic framing or discussion of this topic has really gained dominance, but that perhaps, especially as our society's values tend to polarize or drift apart from sort of a unified set, that a diversified approach about talking about the issues is the best way to get the most amount of people to agree with you or to believe in the policy change you want to see. This process of making this project really showed me so much about the library resources that are here. First of all, I knew nothing about social movement theory before trying to do this project, so it was really nice to be able to give myself a crash course just using the library's resources. The library also provided the actual newspaper archival data that I used for my data set. That means like thousands and thousands of newspaper articles sifted through, but that was super fun, so would recommend. It was overall really exciting to engage in original research. And I just feel really lucky to have the access to such an incredible amount of resources at this university library. So I'm very grateful for that as a student here. I also want to quickly thank the professors who helped me or helped nominate me for this prize. One would be Professor Lauren Edelman, who's not here today, but she is the fearless leader of the Legal Studies Honors Thesis program and an invaluable support to me. And finally, my thesis advisor, Professor Calvin Morrow, who is here today, who has been incredible with his gracious support and advice through this entire process, and who I couldn't have done it all without. So thank you very much.
And we have one more prize winner in the upper division category, Emily Plummer, who I believe is not going to be here today. Her paper is called The Social and Political Organizing of Guatemalan Refugees in Mexico and Their Campaign for Return, 1980 to 1992, for a Peace and Conflict Studies H195 class with Stephanie Ballinger. Just to give you an idea, Emily used NGO reports, government documents, personal accounts, archival documents, and an extensive range of secondary sources to reveal how a refugee-led institution established in the Guatemalan camps in Mexico succeeded in negotiating with the Mexican and Guatemalan governments the safe return of refugees to Guatemala. In his statement of support for her library prize submission, her thesis co-advisor, Dr. Pablo Gonzalez, noted that even though little has been written on the refugee camps, Emily was able to find, through primary and secondary sources, enough information to write a fascinating account of how these camps would eventually move into the international stage in the 1990s. And then her thesis was a, quote, truly exciting and important document to supervise and read. So let's give a round for Emily now. We also have two honorable mentions in the upper division category. The first is Benjamin Sloan for a paper on the road to Damascus, searching for new socialisms in the 1983 Luther Jar History 101 class with Trevor Jackson.
Hi, thanks. So originally I went to this project. I don't know if anyone's been in East Germany in the 80s or visited it, but it was a very socialist Marxist place, and I went to the project looking to kind of expose how they distorted the 1983 celebration of Martin Luther. I went to a professor and I said, hey, look at all this stuff. This is great. These Eric Honecker and all these other politicians, they're totally kind of distorting his image. I talked to him. And he said, well, you slow down, hold on there, that's not really the way to go about this research. You're trying to find a needle in a haystack. And he said, just look at your stuff, tell me what you find. So I went to Jennifer Dorner and we talked. She showed me some resources, and I finally got to a place where I was just kind of trying to look at it objectively. I mean, I don't know, it's impossible, but I try to do that. And I came up with this incredible stuff where I got into these museum catalogs from the 1983 celebrations, and there was some strange stuff. I mean, granted that reading academic German or German from these artists who are out there is strange enough, but they express this sort of autonomy, this kind of artistic autonomy living in the DDR in it. And so from there I ended up reaching out to them, so the guys who are still alive, or still have email. And they wrote back to me, and I was able to kind of create this correspondence with some of these artists. And it was incredible. And I think doing this sort of research is awesome. And thanks John Handel for coming, and Giovanni and Soli. And yeah, thanks, appreciate it.
Okay, and we have one more honorable mention to recognize Tobias Rosen for a paper called Decapitating the Academe, Art History, a 192F course with Professor Darcy Grimaldo Grisby. Tobias?
Hi, everybody. So my paper focused on one of Jacques Louis David's incomplete drawings. It was the tennis court oath of 1789, and it was kind of a reinterpretation of the word incomplete and how, like, an incomplete drawing and its fragmentary nature shows some of the radicalism of a revolutionary moment. And I really wanted to thank, of course, my professors and their lineage of thought, T.J. Clark and Thomas Crow, who are kind of their professors, and then, of course, the library for compiling so many materials that relate to the revolution and the revolutionary deputies. Thank you so much.
So I also wanted to just say, this is an impressive range of student work. There were many people who submitted projects to be considered by the committee. There were lots of impressive things. So to meet the bar to be an award winner or to be an honorable mention category is really quite high. And I want to recognize that students do an amazing amount of work, but also the family and friends who have come today. Your support and your helping get everyone to this point to actually take these kinds of leaps of faith with research are all very important as well. And I'm particularly heartened to see here all the students who recognize their instructors and librarians and the others who supported them along the way. So please, one last round of support for all of that. Turn it over to Victoria.
Hi everyone, how are we doing? Good. It's a great ceremony, right? So I was just noticing that Beth has her glasses on, and this is the first ceremony in 10 years where I'm putting glasses on. Yeah, right? I knew that. First to Beth, first to me. We're about the same age. So there's something in the making of the American Cultures curriculum, the culture of the AC curriculum, that I think needs exposing at the beginning to explain in terms why this year's recipients are so very, very special. So just a quick part history. The AC curriculum has been the fulcrum of critical diversity work on this campus for a long time. In fact, exactly 26 years this year. Created in the late 1980s, the energy for the AC requirement was formed not on campus, but in our surrounding communities. In 1984 in San Francisco and Oakland, longshore workers were leading the Bay Area fight against South African apartheid. For decades, the International Longshore and Warehouse Union had stood against apartheid, refusing to touch South African cargo. Although the national media were not covering the unprecedented boycotts at the beginning, hundreds of local residents and UC Berkeley students gathered to support the members. The students were receiving an education which would literally change the shape of the University of California. Our Berkeley students were inspired to pressure the UC Regents to divest its $3 billion endowment from South African companies supporting apartheid. The student activism escalated on campus, becoming the largest and most sustained period of activism since Vietnam. Their actions were successful. UC did divest from South African companies. The intellectual and political muscles that the students developed, however, didn't waste away. They next turned their attention to the UC Berkeley campus and their curriculum. Pedro Nogueira, then president of the UC Berkeley Graduate Assembly and now distinguished professor of education at UCLA, famously stated that, quote, "We were feeling our oats and thought, now, with this success behind us, we could desegregate the campus, we could desegregate the curriculum." And so the fight for the American Cultures curriculum began. What do we learn from this history? Well, many things, but centrally, that when we recognize that our university is part of larger communities, that we learn from our communities, that our faculty can build the most inspiring learning environments, and that our students are powerful. These are facets of the past that are so very present in the prize recipients' work that we are recognizing today. And this year, perhaps more than any year, and we do say this a lot, but it is so true of this year's submissions, it was the most difficult selection process. Perhaps it's the times we sit in, but all of the submissions demonstrated the intense and immense investment that both faculty and students have in the continuing work of the AC curriculum. So to our first recipient of the American Cultures Teaching Award. who is T. Carlos Roberts from the Department of Music. Is somebody from the music department here to collect on T's behalf today? No? It's unfortunate that T is unavoidably not able to be with us here today, and they were very, very upset that they couldn't be. T teaches 2 incredible American Cultures courses, but today is being recognized for their course Music 137 AC, The Music of Civil Rights. This had no influence on the choice of T as a recipient for the AC Teaching Award today, but perhaps it's particularly appropriate and apt that in the year of the 50th anniversary of the passing of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., that we are recognizing the work of a faculty that elevates into the curriculum the power of culture making, and arguably the most powerful cultural making tool, music, into our students' consciousness of the civil rights movement. In 1964, Dr. King delivered the opening address to the Berlin Jazz Festival. He said, quote, "Jazz speaks for life. The blues tell the story of life's difficulties, and if you think for a moment, you realize that they take the hardest realities of life and put them into music, only to come out with some new hope or sense of triumph. This is triumphant music." The political education at the heart of Dr. King's sentiment is alive in T's course. And as T their self shares, quote, "Ultimately, I seek to help students learn that the scholarship and art they produce has an impact on the world, and that making it is an act of great responsibility." So in their absence, let's please give a round of applause. Okay, let's not tear up here. Our second recipient this afternoon is Patricia Steenland from the College Writing Program and her signature course, College Writing 150 AC, Researching Water in the West. So it would be fair to say that this course has been a game changer in so many ways. Pat's creation and delivery of this course has changed the way that archives are used in the curriculum. And this course has changed, or begun to change, the trust and respect that we as a campus, UC Berkeley, can hope to earn from our community partners. As we know in the shadows of the words from the Nigerian novelist Chimamanda Adichie, there is great danger in a single story. Adichie was talking about the colonial imprint of the British on the narrative of Nigeria, of Africa, and of African descent peoples. But its application is clear in the careful construction of researching water in the West. As Pat herself has shared, what does it mean when a history is lost or silenced? How does it come back to life? What enables that to happen? This project grew to engage those questions. I cannot imagine more meaningful, inspiring work. Just as in the days that created AC, the community excited the possibilities of our campus work. So has the partnership between Pat and the deep relationships with the Paiute community and our Bancroft Library. It's not just that excised and stolen voices have been brought to full volume, but it's the very possibilities of new futures which come from Pat's commitment to providing this special space for our students, for our community partners, and for our university. Thank you, Pat. Please come and receive your award. Don't cry.
I know. Thank you is inadequate. I knew it would be a little touch and go, so I wrote down my words. I may be standing here at the podium, but I'm really representing a team. Harry Williams of the Bishop Paiute tribe joined me in creating this project 8 years ago, and I am so grateful he is here today to share in this recognition. Harry's sitting right there. He brought to campus an untold story and helped make a history that had been silenced come alive for my students. That story, the water history of the Paiute and their accomplishments, especially an ancient engineering system in the Owens Valley, has now become a central and accepted part of Valley history and has taken on new life. But its original absence from the mainstream narrative sparked a quest. How could such important history become invisible? What other parts were missing? How could this knowledge re-enter the classroom without its being appropriated, misdirected, or misheard? How could a tribal community and the university connect, given a historically difficult and fraught relationship? No one knew the answers, and actually at first I didn't even know those were the questions. But we worked together and a way emerged. Our original team also includes Teresa Salazar, curator of Western Americana at the Bancroft, who opened the doors of that august institution and enabled students and community partners to access the archives. It turned out the supporting evidence for the Paiute irrigation system that Harry had researched for so long resides in the Bancroft in the form of a well-worn surveyor's notebook from the 1860s. Our students over the years became the heart of the project. Students like Grace Campbell, who's here today, who you're going to hear from later, they are the reason our community partners commit to this work. Victoria Robinson's vision created the space at the university for this work to happen, and the committed support of American Cultures enables it to continue and grow. Everyone who has joined in this project has had a profound effect on its shape and direction. From the Valley, other leaders and tribal historic preservation officers such as Bill Helmer and Danelle Gutierrez of the Big Pine Paiute tribe, Charlotte Lang of the Kutsitika or the Mono Lake Paiute, and Kathy Bancroft of the Lone Pine Paiute tribe became our teachers in the classroom. On campus, the Berkeley Collegium provided crucial support. The Native community at Cal gave our Owens Valley partners a sense of home. My colleagues in college writing provided encouragement, and I would like to mention today one in particular, Steve Tollefson. Who I think we all knew left us too soon. The best teacher I ever knew, and whose commitment to students and to public service has always been my model. Harry and I have sometimes tried to figure out how to describe the trajectory of this project, as it was clearly something that grew in ways not planned by us. And it occurred to me that perhaps water, our original subject, is a good metaphor. Water can be appropriated, it can be redirected, it can be depleted. But if treated as a living and valued presence, water takes on a life force of its own. It will make its own decisions and determine its own path. After the recent wet winter that followed the years of severe drought, water came to the dry bed of the Owens Lake for the first time in many years. Engineers for the city of Los Angeles busily consulted about what to do. But Kathy Bancroft, one of our community partners, whose people have lived next to the lake since time immemorial, said, "The water knows where to go." Is knowledge similar? It too can be misappropriated, misdirected, and even stolen. But it can also be a vital force. Does living knowledge find its own path? Knowledge that had been written out of history came back to life in our project, and we watched as it found its path. The way forward turned out to be in community, in connection with each other, in an undergraduate classroom. I'm really humbled when I look back and I realize how little I knew when we started. But one thing, as I look out over the room and I see family, I see friends, colleagues, students, community partners, all of whom helped bring this project into being. I see connectedness. And a wise person once said to me, that is the richness of life. And I see it today, and I thank everyone for it.
No more tears, please. This is, this is hard. Okay, our first honorable mention is Grace Campbell. For the paper, The Implications of Engineering Systems, the Los Angeles Aqueduct and the Owens Valley Case Study. And yes, this came from the class that we just recognized with Pat, College Writing 150 AC, Researching Water in the West. I have to say, this kind of universe twist and what brings people into each other's lives is a mystery, but I'm not sure what brought Grace into your course. But I feel that there must have been claps of thunder when this engineering student entered a course designed to consider the complex, overlapping, and often violent relationships at the heart of water management in the western states of the United States. It takes a powerful sense of perspective and courage to critically engage the limits and possibilities of one's chosen discipline, engineering, and create your own, not someone else's intellectual jigsaw puzzle. Grace's paper demonstrates layers of learning and analytical energy in foregrounding the future possibilities of engineering when held in relationship to multifaceted cultural landscapes. Please join me in recognizing Grace.
My name is Grace. I'm a sophomore environmental engineering science major here at Berkeley, and I was one of the very fortunate students to take Pat's class. So a little about my project, it was to assess the social, political, environmental, and cultural implications of engineering systems using the Owens Valley and the Los Angeles Aqueduct as a case study. So I don't really know if I can really explain how meaningful this project was to me and how much it really changed how I wanted to assess my career, my field of engineering. I would like to thank Pat. She was an amazing teacher. She changed how I looked at my subject, how I thought about the Valley, how I thought about being from Los Angeles. I'd like to thank Harry. I was fortunate enough to go to the Owens Valley, and Harry took me to the ancient irrigation ditches of the valley, and it was something that was really important to see, and it was something that is lost in engineering education, and I thought that this was really valuable, and it was something that should be assessed and should have a seat at the table in terms of education, and I thank you.
We have some engineers in the room too, Grace, listening. So our second honorable mention is Shelby Mack for her paper, 21st Education, #More Schools, Not Prisons. Shelby's paper was created in Lisa Garcia Bedoya's course, Education 182 AC, The Politics of Education Inequality. Schools not prisons, books not bars are powerful statements and organizing vortexes used to bring attention to contemporary connections between the disinvestment in education and the hyperinvestment in the carceral state. But as Shelby teases out thoroughly in her paper, there is nothing modern about the racial, class, and gendered interweavings of incarceration in education. A quick point underlines this fact, is that our first state prison in California was built in 1852, and it was some 16 years later that the first UC campus, Berkeley, was built in 1868. Since that time, the state of California has built 31 prisons, and of course we have 10 UC campuses. Shelby's paper extends this carceral time capsule to consider how education reform, school choice, zero tolerance, and desegregation has continued into the present, forging what is beyond hashtags, but equally correct, the school-to-prison pipeline. Please recognize Shelby.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Victoria, for that amazing description of my paper. I writing that paper, I wrote it when it was my first semester. I'm a transfer student. I'm 24, going on 25. Next Friday is my birthday. Yeah, and so, yeah, I wrote that paper being, in a space that, I thought at the time would be life-changing, which it was. Being here has been life-changing, but also there have been difficulties that I have faced, being a Black woman within a predominantly, white institution and things of that sort. So taking this class really opened my eyes and seeing how the education system was created, who it was designed for, and who it was not designed for. And so understanding my own educational experiences and traumas that I've experienced, whether that was criminalization, which means that, being targeted for my dressing, whether that was me being outspoken and me getting a detention, or me facing in-house suspension, all of those things we talked about and discussed in Professor Badola's class, and especially David Turner, who is an amazing GSI, one of my favorite, not favorite, he is my favorite, GSI at Cal, period. He really provided us with a different perspective on how, why the education system is the way that it is, questioning it, but also talking about policies that have been put into place that honestly have done more harm than good. And so doing this work honestly provided me with just an understanding, better understanding of my positionality being within this institution, but also talking more in depth about how we can change, like what are some other solutions that people haven't talked about and haven't discussed. So thank you for this award, and I really appreciate being here in this space. Thank you.
So the fun has to stop. This is the final award of the day. And we're recognizing Nicholas de Leon, who's receiving the AC Student Prize for his paper on Frederick Douglass, Poor Whites and the Rhetoric of Opposites. Nicholas's work was forged in Rhetoric 152 AC, titled Race and Order in the New Public, taught by Nad Pamal. Hi, Nad. In 152 AC, Professor Pamal centers the use of narrative with the philosophical positioning that narrative shapes perspective. And it was the narrative contained in the second autobiography of Frederick Douglass, My Bondage, My Freedom, published in 1855, 10 years after his emancipation, to which Nicholas was drawn. Nicholas's essay, based on Douglass's biography, was exquisitely written, but it was perhaps the deep sense of self-reflection and learning encased in Nicholas's essay and submission to the AC Prize that sat Nicholas's work at the pinnacle of the purpose of the AC classroom. To quote Nicholas himself, "The aim was to use Frederick Douglass's My Bondage, My Freedom as a lens through which to view and analyze the poor, white working class in contemporary America. I wanted to view poor white Americans, particularly those living in rural areas like Appalachia, as in many senses the same poor white working class, quote, slaves that Frederick Douglass discusses in his autobiography. This language choice on behalf of Douglass was not meant to demean, to ridicule, or to subjugate individuals. So neither was the intent of my essay to be cruel or dismissive. Nor was my intent to simply draw correlations between different marginalized groups. Instead, I wanted to suggest the commonality of marginalization, especially in the socioeconomic sense, as a potential basis for multiracial recognition and reconciliation. It was the power of empathy in this suspension of judgment and the art of listening that moved me more than anything else. Nicholas, we'd like to recognize you for your fantastic work.
Good afternoon. I apologize for my energy level. It's dead week, so that's where I'm at right now. First, I'd like to thank the American Cultures Committee for selecting me for this award. I think the last prize I won was for the 8th grade soccer team, so this is unexpected and I'm very humbled. I'd like to thank my family, my beautiful family who made the trip out. They're making a 14-hour drive turnaround in a single day. I'd like to thank my beautiful friends who are seated in the back, those three cuties back there. They give me life, and school can be stressful, and they keep me on balance. And lastly, I'd like to especially thank Professor Pramal, who's seated over there. You not only allowed me to take this essay in the direction I wanted, but cultivated an environment in your classroom which I believe exemplifies what lies at the core of not only the American Culture's mission, but the political heart of my piece. There are a number of directions one could travel after reading the words of Frederick Douglass. Not only was he a man of complexity and eloquence, but a great agitator of the social conscience, whose mark and ability transcends his own time. It's perhaps an odd choice then that one would choose to highlight Douglass's understanding not of blacks in America, but of poor whites. I was aware of how even more odd it might seem that I, someone of Japanese, black, and Hawaiian makeup, would choose such a topic. In March 2016, I began volunteering for the Bernie Sanders campaign. And in volunteering, I don't mean interning on the campaign trail with the campaign staff. I mean phone banking from my laptop from someone's house in Southern California. I remember the first day getting a brief tutorial on how to use the phone banking software and getting an even briefer rundown of how to convince complete strangers to vote for my candidate. They gave us a script, snacks, and wrote the states we would be calling on a whiteboard. It was afternoon Pacific time, so we had a limited window to call the East Coast. After that, it was several hours of the Midwest and the Central Mountain States. I don't think I've been yelled at by so many people in such rapid succession in my entire life. It was a brutal 4 hours. The only thing that people seemed to like about me was that I wasn't asking them to vote for Hillary Clinton. I quickly realized that this was going nowhere. The script was robotic, and I immediately came off as someone who wanted to get something out of you, because I did. Even I wouldn't want to talk to me, so I ditched the script. Eventually, I got on the phone with a woman. I can't remember her name, which state she lived in. What she told me I'll never forget. Off the bat, she wasn't interested in Bernie. She kindly explained that she wouldn't be voting for him. Then she asked me that if I'd be willing to listen for a couple more minutes, she would tell me why. I said yes. She told me that she was a mother of 2. Her husband worked as a coal miner. There was talk of that mine closing. She had recently been laid off. She told me they lived in a small town and employment opportunities were slim. She told me that she felt like she had no other options, and she told me she was voting for Donald Trump. I'm sure other volunteers and coordinators would have urged me to press on, mention universal health care, better education for her kids, anything for the long list of bullet point pros that would be sure to convince anyone that Bernie was the man. But what could I possibly say? Here was someone being left behind amidst a changing economic environment with little to no options left. And 2 children, 2 little boys. I said that I understood, thanked her for her time, and hung up the phone. Even though I didn't agree with the outcome of her decision and doubted whether her candidate would deliver, I felt like the time was to listen. I felt like the time was to just listen, and maybe, if at all possible, empathize with that voice on the phone of someone I would never meet. She lived in a small town in a state I would probably never visit. To simply appeal to our shared identity as Americans seemed to me to be insufficient. It's a word, a container whose contents vary from person to person. But she was a mother who was unsure if she would be able to provide for her children. My mother has fought all my life to provide for me, and my father too. And it was that fact that brought me into a perspective far removed from my own. I hoped I would be saying something much more grand today. Standing in the shadow of Douglass, one can't help but hope to be a bit more eloquent and a bit more brilliant than one actually is. but my experience is my limit. And like Douglas, I find that empathy and dialogue and understanding is not only a principle on which we must build, but one that is crucial to our survival as a nation. I hold on to the spirit of optimism when I hope for new coalitions, horizontal in nature, that cut across existing conditions and bring clarity to a shared vision. We are still that great experiment, and there is still room in our future. I would like to close with one last quote from a man who I also have learned a lot from, Dr. Cornel West. Let it be said of us centuries from now that we were bold and visionary in our efforts to live with courage and compassion in the face of death, to pursue dialogue over and against the overwhelming odds of misunderstanding and violence, and to fight for old and new forms of democracy at the beginning of a century that may well produce novel forms of barbarism and bestiality if we fail to respond to the tests of our times. Thank you.
I think our students and our faculty earn for us the title, the best public university in the world. Again, to just echo, thank you to everybody who made this event possible, to the library staff, to the AC Center staff, to Vice Chancellor Oscar Dubon for hosting us today, and please enjoy the reception. Thank you.